Have you ever had a calm day? No conflicts, no urgency, no major problems, and still ended the day feeling tired? Not a light tiredness, but a deep tiredness. A kind of fatigue that is hard to explain, because from the outside, everything seemed normal. Nothing happened. Nothing went wrong. Nothing required extreme effort. Even so, your energy disappeared. This experience confuses many people, because the logic seems simple. If the day was calm, the body should feel rested. If there was no crisis, the system should feel recovered. But the body does not function based only on what happens. It functions based on what the system needs to maintain, and maintaining stability requires energy. That is the first important idea. You can feel exhausted even on calm days because your system is still working, even when there is no emergency, even when there is no conflict, even when everything appears to be under control. There is a kind of effort that does not show up, a quiet effort, an invisible effort, an internal effort, the effort of maintaining balance. Think about something simple. Maintaining body temperature requires energy. Maintaining blood pressure requires energy. Maintaining attention requires energy. Maintaining emotional stability requires energy. None of this is visible, but all of it consumes resources. Now imagine when the system needs to maintain stability for long periods, when it needs to sustain constant attention, when it needs to remain in silent alert. That continuous work creates wear, even on calm days. An important detail is the difference between visible activity and internal activity. You may not be running, you may not be solving problems, you may not be facing crises, but the internal system may still be active, monitoring, adjusting, compensating, trying to keep everything functioning. That process consumes energy, and limited energy creates fatigue. Now consider something many people have never thought about. External calm does not mean internal rest. The environment may be quiet, but the system may still be working. It may be sustaining balance. It may be preventing overload. It may be trying to maintain control. That effort does not show, but it accumulates. Over time, that accumulation turns into persistent fatigue. You may recognize this pattern. You wake up tired, spend the day tired, go to bed tired, even without major problems, even without major demands, even without intense events. This type of fatigue does not come from a difficult day. It comes from a system that has remained active for a long time. Another point worth noticing is the role of adaptation. The human body adapts to effort. If effort lasts long enough, the system learns to function under pressure, learns to maintain attention, learns to sustain vigilance, learns to respond quickly. This adaptation helps deal with difficult situations, but it comes with a cost. Maintaining that level of functioning requires constant energy, and constant energy use creates wear. Now consider a common situation. You went through a stressful period, maybe weeks, maybe months, maybe years. During that time, the system had to work harder. It had to maintain attention. It had to solve problems. It had to sustain responsibility. Then the situation improved. Pressure decreased. Problems disappeared. But the fatigue remained. That happens because the system does not switch off immediately. It continues functioning at the same pace. It remains prepared. It remains attentive. It continues consuming energy. Even when it is no longer necessary, there is a simple name for this: accumulated load. Every challenge requires energy. Every worry requires energy. Every decision requires energy. Every adjustment requires energy. When these events repeat, the load increases. And when the load increases, wear appears. That wear does not depend only on the present. It depends on history. It depends on what has already been demanded. It depends on what has already been sustained. It depends on what has already been carried. Another important element is incomplete recovery. Restoring energy requires time. It requires stability. It requires reduction of effort. If the system remains active, recovery does not happen fully. That creates a deficit, a quiet deficit, a progressive deficit. You keep functioning, but with less energy, with less clarity, with less endurance. Now think about something simple. Have you noticed how small tasks feel bigger when you are tired? Replying to a message, making a decision, organizing an appointment. Those activities have not changed, but the effort required has changed. That happens because available energy has decreased. Another relevant factor is the relationship between energy and perception. When energy is low, everything feels heavier, everything feels slower, everything feels more difficult. That sensation is not imagined. It is physiological. Now observe a common phenomenon. Many people blame themselves for feeling tired. They think, I should be doing better. I should have more energy. I should be functioning normally. But the body does not respond to expectations. It responds to internal state. If accumulated wear exists, performance decreases, not by choice, but by necessity. Another important detail is the impact of prolonged stability. Keeping everything functioning requires effort. Avoiding mistakes requires effort. Sustaining responsibility requires effort. Managing emotions requires effort. Even when everything appears calm, that constant effort creates a specific kind of fatigue, a quiet fatigue, a persistent fatigue, a fatigue that is hard to explain. Now a natural question begins to form. If nothing happened, why am I still tired? The answer may be simpler than it seems, because the system is still working, and that work does not depend only on events. It depends on the need to maintain stability. It depends on the need to maintain safety. It depends on the need to maintain functioning. That maintenance requires energy, and limited energy creates wear, because there is a kind of effort that does not show, an effort that does not attract attention, an effort that is not recognized as work, but that consumes energy every single day. This effort is the effort of maintaining functioning, maintaining routine, maintaining responsibility, maintaining emotional stability, maintaining presence. Even when nothing extraordinary happens, think about the following situation. You wake up, you complete your tasks, you handle small demands, you maintain conversations, you make decisions. Nothing dramatic, nothing urgent, nothing unusual, but at the end of the day, a clear sensation appears. Exhaustion, not because there was a crisis, but because there was continuity. Continuity requires energy, and limited energy creates wear. Here is an important idea that many people overlook. The body does not become tired only because of intensity. It becomes tired because of duration. Prolonged effort generates fatigue, even when the effort is moderate, even when the effort seems small, even when the effort seems invisible. Notice something that happens frequently. You can deal with a major problem for a short period and recover quickly, but dealing with small demands for a long period can create greater wear because the system never fully switches off. It remains functioning. It remains sustaining attention. It remains adjusting responses. It remains maintaining balance. That continuous functioning consumes energy. Another important aspect is the role of predictability. When life is predictable, the system relaxes. When life is uncertain, the system remains active. Even on calm days, uncertainty can exist. Small worries, small responsibilities, small decisions, each one requires attention. Each one consumes energy, and the accumulation of those demands creates fatigue. It is worth considering a point that often goes unnoticed. Not all fatigue comes from problems. Some types of fatigue come from maintenance. Maintaining relationships requires energy. Maintaining performance requires energy. Maintaining organization requires energy. Maintaining self-control requires energy. These activities do not seem intense, but they are constant, and constancy creates wear. A relevant detail is the relationship between energy and emotional recovery. When the system spends too much time and effort, sensitivity increases, tolerance decreases, patience decreases. Small events become more difficult, not because the problem became bigger, but because energy became lower. That explains why some people feel irritable on calm days, or emotionally sensitive without a clear reason, or discouraged even when everything appears fine. These responses do not indicate weakness. They indicate where. Now consider the impact of continuous responsibility. Being responsible requires attention. It requires memory. It requires organization. It requires decision-making. These processes consume energy. And when they repeat every day, consumption accumulates. That accumulation creates a specific type of fatigue. A quiet fatigue. A persistent fatigue. A fatigue that does not depend on dramatic events. It depends on continuity. Another important phenomenon is what can be called compensatory effort. When energy decreases, the brain tries to maintain performance. It increases effort. It increases concentration. It increases control. That extra effort allows functioning to continue. But it also increases wear because it requires more resources. Over time, that cycle becomes visible. You continue doing what you have always done, but with more difficulty, with more slowness, with more effort. That change does not mean incapacity. It means reduced available energy. Now take a moment to reflect on something simple. Have you noticed how motivation decreases when fatigue increases? Activities that once felt easy begin to feel heavy. Simple tasks take longer. Small decisions require more energy. That phenomenon does not happen because of lack of interest. It happens because of lack of energy. Another important point is the relationship between energy and mental clarity. When energy decreases, thinking slows down. Memory falters. Attention becomes unstable. That can create doubt. It can create insecurity. It can create frustration. But the cause remains where? At this moment, consider the role of recovery. Recovery does not simply mean stopping. Recovery means restoring energy. If the system remains active during rest, recovery remains incomplete. That explains why some people rest, but do not recover. They sleep, but wake up tired. They stop, but remain exhausted. Another important detail is the impact of recent history. The body carries physiological memory. If there have been intense periods recently, the system remains sensitive. It remains attentive. It remains prepared. Even after the situation has changed, that prolonged state consumes energy, and limited energy creates fatigue. Think about something many people have never heard before. Calm does not mean recovery. Absence of problems does not mean restoration of energy. Silence does not mean rest. The body needs time to recover. It needs stability. It needs real reduction of effort. Without those elements, wear remains. Another relevant point is the difference between appearance and functioning. On the outside, everything may look normal. Routine maintained, responsibilities fulfilled, relationships preserved. But internally, the system may be tired. It may be exhausted. It may be operating at its limit. That contrast creates confusion because performance continues, but energy decreases. Another important aspect is the perception of productivity. When energy decreases, productivity drops. That can create self-criticism. It can create guilt. It can create a sense of failure, but the cause is not lack of ability, it is lack of available energy. Now notice a common pattern. When fatigue lasts for too long, the body begins to conserve energy. It reduces speed. It reduces initiative. It reduces performance. That behavior can be interpreted as lack of motivation, but biologically, it is protection. The system slows down to preserve resources. Another important detail is the relationship between energy and well-being. Sufficient energy creates readiness. Sufficient energy creates clarity. Sufficient energy creates emotional stability. When energy decreases, well-being decreases. That change may be subtle, but it is noticeable. Now consider the role of time. Accumulated fatigue does not disappear quickly. It needs to be reduced gradually, with stability, with recovery, with continuity. That process takes time. Another relevant phenomenon is the sense of normality. Many people get used to fatigue. They begin to consider exhaustion as something normal, as part of routine, as part of life. But that state is not neutral. It indicates where. Now we arrive at an important understanding. You can feel exhausted on calm days, not because something went wrong, but because the system is still functioning, still sustaining stability, still maintaining control, still spending energy, even without crisis, even without urgency, even without visible problems. And this brings us to the central idea of this video. You are not tired because life is difficult. You are tired because your system has been active for a long time, because maintaining balance requires energy, because sustaining stability requires effort, because continuing to function requires resources, even when everything appears calm. And that understanding opens the door to the next question. If fatigue appears even on calm days, if energy decreases even without problems, if the system remains active even without crisis, then a natural question emerges. Why does relaxing feel so difficult? Why does switching off feel impossible? Why does rest feel incomplete? That is exactly the question we are going to explore next. Why your nervous system never learned to relax.